So unang-una po i-define ko muna or explain ko sa inyo kung ano ba talaga yung term na people power. Okay? So far po sa bansa natin there has been two successful people power. Unang-una po yung against kay President Marcos Sr., the father po of President Bongbong Marcos, kung saan because of massive rallies, protests during the late 1980s ay napilitan pong pumunta sa Hawaii si President Marcos Sr. until eventually po nag-install ng bagong revolutionary government back then. And that government was eventually ratified po by the Freedom Constitution and eventually by the 1987 Constitution. Okay, so mamaya explain.
Ito nga ho, pag-uusapan natin ngayon mga reaction update page. Dito nga ho, pag-uusapan ho natin ang sedition at people power. Noon pa nga lang mga kabdita, successful. Matagumpay hong napalayas. Ay, narinig naman po natin kay Atty. Abayon na pinalayas itong si Marcos Sr. at ang kanyang pamilya papuntang Hawaii. Bakit ho? Kasi nga ho sa matinding corruption, dictatorship at katakawan ho sa kapangyarihan na ngayon mga kabdita, parang hindi na ho nalalayo ang anak niya sa nangyayari ngayon, corruption. Billion, trillion ho ang nawawalang pera. Isipin nyo po yan mga kabdita, meron pa ho tayong mga hindi alam na bagay. May mga bagay pa ho tayong hindi alam o hindi pa natin nabubulaklat. Kasi mga kabdit, may mga flood control pa lang tayo eh. Diyan pa lamang tayo sa mga baha-baha. Pero panigurado mga kabdita, meron pa ho mga niluluto o may mga ginagawa pang kabalastugan niya mga yan na hindi po natin nakikita. Imposible hong flood control lang po yung pinagkakakitaan nila. Imposible ho yan. Meron at meron pa rin dyan mga ka-update na panigurado ngayon gumagana na hindi pa rin nalalaman ng mga Pilipino. Kasi oras na malaman yan mga ka-update, wala na. Booking na ho talaga sila. Para kaya eto mga ka-update, parang malabo o hindi malabo pala, hindi malabong magaya itong si Bongbong Marcos at ang kanyang pamilya na sipain papuntang Hawaii. Bakit ho? Ano po bang ginagawa ng presidente? Ayon kay VP Sara, hindi nga nagtatanong kung anong problema o sakuna ang meron ang ating bansa. Doon po yun sa interview kay VP Sara. Hindi ho daw mahilig magtanong. Isipin mo presidente ka, hindi mo alam yung nangyari sa bansa mo. Binebentahan mo pa ng tagbe-20 pesos. Ha? Binebentahan mo ng tagbe-20 bigas itong mga taong nasakuna. Nilindol, binaha, bebentahan mo, pagkakakitaan mo pa. Kaya yung mga magsasaka, mga kapatid, sila ho yung nakakaawa. May mga magsasaka ho, tumitigil na magbenta kasi binibili ho sa kanila 6 to 8 pesos. Yung ginagawa ho ng mga ibang magsasaka, magtataniman sila ng palay, aani ho sila, pansarili na lang nila, pangkain na lang nila, kesa ibenta ho nila ng 1 kilo, 6 to 8 pesos. Luging-lugi ho yung mga ating kababayan. Diba, dapat po yung, kung tutuusin, agricultural country tayo, pagtuunan ho ng pansin yung mga farmers natin. Bigyan ho sila ng magagarang gamit. Kasi po, napakayaman ng ating bansa. Mayaman na mayaman, hindi man lang sa pera, mayaman ho tayo sa mineral. Yung lupa ho natin, mapagtatamnan ho natin yan ng magandang kabuhayan para sa ating mga kababayang Pilipino. Pero anong ginagawa nila? Hindi ho nila pinupukusan, hindi ho nila binibigyan ng pansin yung mga ating kababayang magsasaka, mga farmers. Diyan lang po nangyayari yan. Kaya hanggat ngayon mga kabdi, tignan niyo yung mga karating nating bansa. Yung malalapit lang dyan sa Southeast Asia, umaasenso, Singapore, umaasenso ho yung mga yan. Marami ho. Yung Pilipinas lang ho talaga yung napag-iiwanan. Napag-iiwanan ho tayo ng panahon. Hindi ho tayo nagle-level. Naka-stuck pa rin tayo sa rock bottom. Naka-stuck pa rin ho tayo. Nandun pa rin tayo sa pinakamababa. Totoo ho yan. Huwag ho kayong masaktan mga ka-update. Kasi yan po yung nangyari ngayon. Kung hindi po korupsyon ang nagpapaikot sa gobyerno, kung wala hong korupsyon na nangyari ngayon, mayaman ho tayo. Siguro ho magaganda yung mga buildings, maraming investor na papasok dito. Siyempre matutuwa yung mga yan kung magkikita nilang maayos yung bansa. Pero ngayon, takot ho silang pumasok. Pati nga yung mga stock market bumagsak dahil sa korupsyon ng ating bansa. Sino po ba yung nasisisi ngayon? Yung gobyerno. Tapos hindi lang yan. Last year, tayo ho yung may pinakamalaking pinakamaraming nabentang ginto. Pilipinas. Pilipinas ho yung may record sa history na pinakamaraming nabentang ginto sa panahon ngayon ni Marcos Jr. Kaya talagang manggigigil ho kayo. Saan po nila dinadala yan? Sa ano ho nila gagamitin yung mga pera? Di ba? Kaya mga ka-update, hanggat sila ho yung nakaluklok, wala hong mangyayari sa ating bayan. Wala hong mangyayari. Hindi ho mag-improve. Hindi magle-level up. Panay lugmok, kawawa yung mga Pilipino. Basta naiisip lang ho nila yung mga sarili nila, yung mga kapakanan ho nila, yung mga kaibigan ho nila, yun na ho yung gusto nila. Pagkakakitaan lang nila yung mga Pilipino. Ginagawa nga nilang retirement yung Senado. Hindi lang Senado, Malacanang, lahat ng mga opisyal. Halos lahat ng opisyal dyan sa gobyerno, ginagawa po nilang retirement para may pension sila. Hindi ka pa nga retire, may pumipension ka na, pumapaldo ka na. Pumapaldo ka na ng billion, trillion. Kaya dito mga kapatid, huwag na ho nating pahabain ito. Rekta na ho tayo. Pero bago yan, isang like, isang share, isang subscribe lamang ho mga kapatid. Malaking tulong na ho yan. Kaya diretso na ho tayo.
Ko rin po sa inyo yung interpretation regarding the revolutionary people power nung panahon nila President Cory Aquino. May decided case po yan kung saan inexplain ng Supreme Court. Okay? And then yung pangalawa naman po na people power natin, which is the people power 2 naman, which involves naman po si former President Erap Estrada, the father po of the current Senator Jinggoy Estrada, kung saan nag-massive rallies din po ulit sa EDSA because of the impeachment trial, yung hindi sila nagkasundo, yung tungkol dun sa envelope na yon, which led to the resignation po of President Erap Estrada. Okay, so ang interpretation din po ng Supreme Court dun sa mga actions ni President Erap back then was resignation din daw po yun. So kung makita po nyo, there are 2 successful people power rallies po sa bansa natin which resulted to yung una, change in government, and number 2 po, change in the president lang via constitutional succession. Yung umakyat po si VP GMA Gloria Macapagal Arroyo to succeed and replace former President Erap Estrada po. Okay? And then, brief discussion lang din po tayo so far sa mga naganap na Philippine anti-corruption protests in the year 2025 kasi baka po hindi kayo updated or hindi nyo na talaga alam yung nangyari. So basically po, this started nung September 21. Yun po yung massive rally all across. Unang-una sa Luneta Park and then sa hapon nun, was nasa EDSA Shrine naman po yung nangyari. And then meron din po sa Liwasang Bonifacio. At ito rin yung nagkagulo na medyo nagkagulo po sa Mendiola after ng mga Luneta Park rallies. Personally po, I attended the Luneta rally in the morning back then, and in the afternoon po, I also attended the EDSA Shrine rallies naman po. So meron akong vlog actually for that. So just search for it na po sa playlist if you want to see kung ano yung pinagagawa ko dun sa rally. Until yung pinaka-latest po niyan ngayon was last October 17 lang. Yan, October 17, National Day of Action. Ito which was led by mga students po to, kahapon lang po to. And prior to this October 17 was yung October 12-13 naman na rally na pinangunahan ni Kiko Barsaga, si Congress Miao. Okay, so yan po yung mga developments so far. And aside from the October 17 and October 12 rallies, meron pang mga scheduled rallies on October 21, I believe is the next schedule. And hindi ko na alam kung meron pa bang next after nyan. But so far, yan po yung mga major rallies na nangyari for the year 2025 in relation to the message of, in relation to the anti-corruption messages po. Okay, so hopefully klaro po yan. And now naman po, pag-usapan naman natin yung sa Constitution para maintindihan nyo talaga. So of course, our basis is the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, which is the 1987 Constitution. And then yung pinakauna po na titingnan natin dito is nasa Article 2, Section 1. The Philippines is a democratic and republic state. Sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. Diba? So from this provision, itong second sentence po, may kita natin na powerful talaga tayo tayong taong bayan, the people of the Republic of the Philippines, because sovereignty and all government authority emanates from us, 'di ba? Kung sa Tagalog pa, sa atin po nanggagaling ang kapangyarihan ng bansa natin at yung authority ng gobyerno natin para umandar sila. In simpler terms po, kung wala po tayo, the taong bayan, wala din po yung bansa natin at yung authority ng mga government officials natin to function and perform their job as the public officers po or public servants natin. Okay, so again, Section 1, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution is the most important provision regarding this because sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. So sa pinaka-simple terms po, ang taong bayan po talaga ang boss ng government at ng bansa natin. Okay? And then next po dyan, we will go then sa Article 3 naman po, Bill of Rights, specifically sa Section 4. So this one is yung sa freedom of speech natin, free speech, freedom of expression, to peaceful assembly, and petition the government for redress of grievances. So Section 4, no law shall be passed abridging the freedom of speech, of expression, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay? So yung free speech po sa mga rally na to, ito yung pag nagko-conduct tayo ng mga political speeches kung saan may mga sinasabi tayo na mag-resign na si ganitong government officer, and then we are trying to influence people na maniwala sa mga advocacy na ganun, na anti-corruption advocacy, because that is free speech po, that is a political speech, and political speech po is a protected type of speech provided hindi siya papasok naman sa rebellion or sedition. Later naman po, explain ko rin sa inyo yung sa sedition, sa revised penal code side naman. Okay, so yan po yun. Again, ulitin ko, pag nagsispeech ka po, na sabi ka na because of the massive corruption dito sa bansa natin, dapat maging accountable yung mga officers na yan, dapat mag-resign si ganyan-ganyan, yan, that will fall under free speech natin. Okay, and yung freedom of expression naman po, ito yung paghawak natin ng mga placards kung saan may mga message, or yung mga iba naman nagsusuot ng mga armbands, di ba? Yung dun sa trillion peso march, ang gusto nila mga white armbands naman daw yung ilagay sa, I believe, sa vehicles nila and maybe in their person also. So that's freedom of expression naman. Okay? And of the press, of course, ito yung press na mabigyan ng information para ma-disseminate sa public. Hindi pwede i-prohibit yun. In other words po, dapat hindi magkaroon ng press blackout or information blackout. Okay? And then yung last po, right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition. Ito na mismo yung pagrarally natin sa mga specific venues kasi we want to petition the government. When you say petition, may gusto tayong i-grant ng government. Doon po papasok ngayon yung para mag-petition tayo na maging accountable yung mga certain government officials natin or mag-resign si ganito and ganyan, so on and so forth. Okay, so yan po yung next na important dito. Section 4 of Article 3 of the Bill of Rights, which touches on the freedom of speech natin, of expression, and the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, so before we go on to the next topic po, ang emphasize ko lang dito or ang gusto ko i-take note nyo po talaga, my fellow taong bayan, is this one. The right of the people peaceably to assemble. Okay, with further emphasis sa peaceably. So dapat po peaceful tayo, mapayapa. Hindi yung basta-basta lang nanggugulo, nagsusunog ng mga kung ano-ano or nagkukos ng mayhem or anarchy. Okay? And then next naman po, we will now be discussing mga case law, mga jurisprudence po, which defined or explained yung mga EDSA 1 and 2. So this is the case of Estrada versus Desierto, GR number 14610-15, March 2, 2001. And to be specific po, dito tayo lang sa first issue. Yung issue dito is whether or not the case at bar involves a political question. Wala tayong masyadong pakialam sa issue na to. Gusto lang natin yung legal principle na na-touch on dito kung saan in-explain yung distinction between the EDSA People Power 1 and 2. Okay? Ito po yan na paragraph. So kung makita po ninyo, the legal distinction between EDSA 1, EDSA 2 is clear. EDSA 1 involves the exercise of the people power of revolution which overthrew the whole government. So kung makita po nyo, in-emphasize talaga people power of revolution. Nagkaroon po ng revolution. And then EDSA 2 naman is an exercise of people power of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly to petition the government for redress of grievances which only affected the office of the president. Tapos ang next, sabi ng Supreme Court po, EDSA 1 is extra-constitutional. Okay? So when you say extra-constitutional, unconstitutional, labas po sa constitution yung nangyari nung EDSA 1 kasi ang nangyari people power of revolution, diba? But anyway po, going back, EDSA 1 is extra constitutional and the legitimacy of the new government that resulted from it cannot be the subject of judicial review, but EDSA 2 is intra-constitutional and the resignation of the sitting president that it caused and the succession of the vice president as president are subject to judicial review. So EDSA 1 presented a political question. So political question daw po yung EDSA 1 kasi extra-constitutional siya. Labas po siya sa constitution back then. But EDSA 2 involves legal question. But anyway po, ang main point ko dito is that bakit naging legal itong current government natin kung considered pala na extra-constitutional yung EDSA 1. Diba? Kasi ito pong current government natin, this was installed via a people power revolution nga. Diba yung mga revolution that means nagkaroon ng rebellion or sedition ba which overthrew the whole government. So ngayon, bakit naging legitimate to itong government natin despite this na people power of revolution? And the answer to that po is nandito yan sa previous paragraph. Okay? And ang sinabi lang po ng Supreme Court dyan, in the case of Lawyers League for a Better Philippines and or so on and so forth et al., in the cited cases, we held that the government of former President Aquino was the result of a successful revolution by the sovereign people, albeit a peaceful one. No less than the Freedom Constitution declared that the Aquino government was installed through a direct exercise of the power of the Filipino people in defiance of the provisions of the 1973 Constitution as amended. Okay? So in simpler terms po, naging valid itong government natin kasi niratify po ng taong bayan by the subsequent constitutions after nung People Power Revolution, which is yung una niyan, yung Freedom Constitution, until eventually yung 1987 Constitution natin, di ba? So in other words, kahit na po extra-constitutional yung pag-install nitong current government natin, since the people eventually ratified it via a new constitution, edi naging valid po itong government natin, okay? And the reason being po is because of Section 1, Article 2, di ba? Yung sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. So because niratify na nga ng tao, therefore valid na itong current government natin. Okay, so yan po yung difference. EDSA 1 was outside the Constitution, hindi siya supposedly legal, but nevertheless, since it was ratified, naging valid po itong current government natin. Tapos yung sa EDSA 2 naman, it is a intra-constitutional, meaning legal po siya, completely legal and pasok sa Constitution natin because ang nangyari doon was yung sa Section 4, Article 3, yung to petition grievances via peaceful assembly. Okay? So yan po yung difference ng dalawang successful people power dito sa bansa natin. Okay, ngayon punta naman po tayo sa criminal side of things kasi ang nangyari po ngayon sa nakikita ko based on my personal observation, so this is my personal opinion po which is protected by my right to free speech as provided by Section 4, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution. Okay, so anyway po, ang observations ko and opinion ko po sa mga bagay-bagay ngayon ay every time po there is a discussion of mga anti-corruption rallies, laging lumalabas itong rebellion, sedition, and coup d'etat na nagiging seditious daw yung mga actions ng iilang mga private individuals and then nagkakaroon daw ng coup d'etat attempts naman sa military and then possible rebellion din daw yung sa iba naman. Okay? So in other words po, ang point ko dito na mix and match na porket there are individuals who want to exercise Section 4 Article 3, ang nagiging counter palagi is rebellious na daw yun or seditious. And ngayon, i-discuss lang natin to para maintindihan nyo talaga kung ano ba yung rebellion and sedition. And i-touch on na rin po natin yung coup d'etat para maintindihan nyo talaga. Okay, so for that po, we will go to our revised Penal Code of the Philippines, Act number 3815, December 8, 1930. So sobrang tanda na po nitong batas natin. And then we will just go to the rebellion and sedition, yung mga crimes against public order. Okay? So unang-una po, titingnan muna natin yung Article 134, rebellion. So from here, makita po ninyo ang elements of the crime of rebellion. Rebellion or insurrection, how committed? It states here that the crime of rebellion or insurrection is committed by rising publicly and taking arms. Okay? So when you rise publicly, yung public po, nag-rise bigla, nagkagulo, tapos nag-take up arms sila. Ibig sabihin, meron po silang weapons or armas against the government for the purpose of removing from the allegiance. Okay? So yung point po ninyo, gusto ninyo tanggalin yung gobyerno ng Pilipinas or palitan or tanggalin po yung pagiging loyal or allegiance nyo to the Republic of the Philippines. So yung keywords po natin dito is rising publicly and taking arms. Okay? So ngayon po, punta naman po tayo sa Article 139, sedition, how committed. So we discussed this, diba, lately lang po in one of my last videos. Okay? But anyway po, going back, sedition po is committed by rising publicly and tumultuously in order to attain by force. Okay? So ito po yung related na sa government or political reasons, itong 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basahin nyo na lang po itong 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basta yung summary naman po nito, this is related to government functions or political reasons. Okay? And the keyword po na iti-take note natin dito is again, rise publicly and tumultuously, and then dapat may force. May ginamit pong force ang taong bayan para ma-achieve tong mga political ends or government or to prohibit the government from performing certain functions. Okay? So again, take note po, dapat may rising publicly and tumultuously and may ginamit po na force sa paggawa ninyo nitong mga bagay-bagay na to. And ngayon po, punta naman tayo sa coup d'etat. So nag-next law lang po ako kasi hindi pala yun yung revised penal code as amended yung napakita ko sa inyo. Pero anyway, same pa rin pa naman po yung definition ng rebellion at sedition sa original at amended version. The only addition po dito sa Republic Act 6968, the 1990 amendment po to the revised penal code is nagdagdag po sila ng provisions for coup d'etat. Okay? So kung makita po ninyo, ang coup d'etat is the swift attack accompanied by violence, intimidation, threat, strategy, or stealth directed against duly constituted authorities of the Republic or any military camp or installation, so on and so forth. And then yung next po na iti-take note natin dito is by any persons or persons belonging to the military or police or holding any public office or employment. So basically, somewhat similar lang din po to dun sa rebellion and sedition, pero ang gumawa po para mag-constitute siya as coup d'etat is dapat yung gumawa is someone belonging to the military, police, or holding any public office or employment. And kung mapapansin po ninyo, yung pinaka-common denominator dito sa coup d'etat, rebellion or insurrection, tapos sa sedition is dapat may violence, force, or intimidation. Okay? Yan po yung mga common denominators dyan. So ngayon po, i-explain ko naman sa inyo kung paano natin mababalance yung mga constitutional rights natin in relation to this revised penal code provisions. Okay? So ngayon po, balik lang tayo naman sa Section 4, Article 3 ulit of the 1987 Constitution. So kung matatandaan po ninyo kanina, di ba pinatake note ko po talaga sa inyo itong last part, yung right of the people peaceably to assemble. And the reason po kaya pina-highlight at pinatake note ko po talaga sa inyo yun, kasi di ba like what I showed you dun po sa sedition, rebellion, and coup d'etat, one of the key requirements doon is meron kayong force, violence. Basically, meron kayong gawin na that will result to a crime in order to achieve yung gusto nyo ma-achieve na political reasons or purposes. Okay? Pero kung sundin lang po talaga natin itong word ng Section 4, edi hindi po yun papasok sa rebellion kasi peaceful assembly yung ginagawa natin. And if there is peaceful assembly, then of course, there is no use of force, violence, or intimidation. Diba? Or wala din pong armas basically. Kasi kung titingnan po nyo yung sa rebellion, rising publicly and taking up arms. Okay? Pero if we just exercise Section 4, ang armas lang po natin, hindi po armas quote-unquote armas. Okay? Clarify ko lang din po. Yung quote-unquote armas po natin doon ay yung mga placards lang natin at yung mga boses natin kung saan gusto natin managot yung mga dapat managot na mga public officers. Diba? Kung sino man yung mga involved sa mga anomalous and corruption issues na yan. Okay? So again, ulitin ko lang po, as long as we stick to the very words of Section 4, there is no sedition, rebellion, or coup d'etat kasi karapatan po natin yan as a member of the taong bayan of the Republic of the Philippines to exercise our free speech, our freedom of expression, and to petition our grievances via peaceful assembly. Okay? So kung meron pong mga nag-organize na mga anti-corruption rallies, as long as hindi nyo po pinopromote yung violence, hindi nyo pinopromote na mag-take up arms against the government, hindi po yan siya rebellion or sedition. Okay? I would just like to emphasize that. Kasi lagi po yan nagbabanggaan eh. Pag may nag-organize, may lalabas ng statement na seditious daw yon. But we always have to look at the intent and the purpose. Is it simply the taong bayan exercising their fundamentally protected constitutional right? Or meron pa ba silang ibang malisyosong intent or criminal intent to commit rebellion, sedition, or coup d'etat as the case may be? Diba? At tatandaan po natin, every time the Filipino people exercises this Section 4, this being a fundamentally protected constitutional right, yung pabor po ay nasa sa atin po yan palagi. Diba? Lagi pong yung burden to establish establish na we violated the clear present danger test, or in other words po, the strict scrutiny test, yung burden po niyan is nasa government natin. Because again, this is a fundamentally protected constitutional right. So kung klaro naman po yung objective natin ay para lang magpetition peacefully at para ipalabas po yung sama ng loob natin sa government, hindi po tayo dapat basta-basta pigilan or pagbawalan yan ng gobyerno natin. Okay? Because ang next po natatandaan natin dito is Section 1 of Article 2, the sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. Okay?